Good evening and welcome to the Masheleng Money Podcast, where we discuss issues surrounding financial literacy. I'm Letsha Kgotla, and on today's episode, we're talking about mental health and personal finance. Letsha Kgotla. Letsha Kgotla is a wellness coordinator and trained counselor. She holds a Bachelor of Education, Counseling and Guidance Services from the University of Botswana. Tune in.
Thank you and welcome to yet another episode of Masheleng Money Podcast. So today we're discussing a very interesting and very, very touchy subject around mental wellness. Letsha Kgotla, she's a trained counselor on matters of, anything that you need to speak about when it comes to counseling. So, Masheleng.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here speaking on money issues, one of my favorite things.
Thank you so much. So Letsha, before we start, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hey. My name, like you already mentioned, Letsha Kgotla. I'm a trained counselor. I have a Bachelor of Education in Counseling that I did here in our local university, University of Botswana. On a personal capacity, how le khakalanyana ba re fara motsefale. So that's basically who I am. Although I'm trained in counseling, I did evolve into the training space, basically spreading education about emotional issues and emotional wellness. So right now I am the wellness coordinator for Key Wealth Group of companies that originated in the space of financial advisory and sharing financial products, all in the aim of moving humanity forward, for the sake of progress, national progress, personal progress as well. Yeah.
So what do you think could have caused that shift to move from just general financial maybe advisory services to move into mental wellness and other wellness type of programs?
For the company or for myself?
For the company.
All right. I'll start with myself though, because I think it's quite valuable as well. When I started practice after school, which would have been in clinical. In clinical practice, where you sit down, you listen to people's problems, hear what the issues really are. I noticed that it's okay to help people out of a rut, but then after that, what happens? What kind of tools do you offer them? Are there any strategies that they can follow to prevent being in this situation again? And that's when I realized that education is a huge component of therapy, a huge component of well-being. So that's how I got more attracted to the education space than the clinical aspect of it. And that's how I met my current employer, doing training and therapy at the same time. So we worked on our first project together. We realized that there's a huge synergy here. And of course I found that they were already in the training space. But after I joined is when we really started being intentional about wellness, because we realized that there's linkages between how people behave in their personal capacity and how they behave in terms of their personal finances.
And then I'm just thinking, because mental wellness, it's a big thing, but bontsi ba nako re na re lebeletse ele sengwe se le hale se le nosi, right? Like wa tsoga maphakela and then you have a problem mentally, either depression, yalo, all sorts of diseases associated with that. But nako le nako ha go buiwa nna ile khanya gore okay, no, this person went through this, we le spateleng or hela tsa itsela botshelo, and then that's it, right? But what are some of the underlying factors they lead to that identify you try to solve this other programs?
Yes, I think the number one issue is our upbringing. I don't think as a community we focus enough attention on how we parent our children. And unfortunately, during the formative years is where we form our ideas about what the world is going to be like, what the world has in store for you, and what you're going to offer the world. So it's very important that we put the right things into children so that they stand a fighting chance once life's inevitable challenges start weighing them down. So that's one part. But number two is lifestyle also. The decisions that we make once we become adults about the kind of lifestyles that we lead. There's a direct link between where we spend our time, what we focus our energy on, and the quality of life we end up harnessing. For example, I'll just give an example. There's a direct link between your nutrition, what you eat, how much exercise you get, and your mental health. If you're not sleeping right, you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to be susceptible to conditions like anxiety that progress into depression, worst case scenario, suicide. So it's very important that we spread education about the dangers of ungoverned lifestyles, because we find that we lose a lot of quality individuals to mental health issues because of this gap between. So you find that a lot of people are financially empowered. You go to school, get a nice job, get a very beautiful salary, but you can't really make a good lifestyle for yourself. You can't really create a legacy kind of life for yourself. Why? Because there's so many issues that you're dealing with mentally that you're not dealing with in the correct way. And the thing about mental health issues, the thing about emotional issues is that they tend to show themselves. You can't hide the fact that you're dealing with or you're having a mental issue or an emotional hiccup. You can't hide these things. They will show in your behavior in one way or another. You're either overeating, over drinking, womanizing, or manizing, if that's a word. Spending your money wrong. These are just examples of the ways that these things show up in your behavior. So it's very important that if you want to be a successful individual at all, you need to start by managing your emotions, managing your mental well-being.
It's all about balance, right? It's all about balance. I've seen people who grew up being quite frugal in the way that they spend. They invest well there and there. They were taught the right principles when it comes to money, right? There are not so many families that actually teach such principles. And then later on, you find this person has taken a U-turn, right? Now they no longer believe in those things. Maybe never did because now do you think the way with so much access to social media, you see in a certain way, now you don't have to go anywhere to know what people are doing.
Exactly.
So
I know what Kim Kardashian had for breakfast, for example. Yes.
So you're seeing friends flying, overseas, Baba Ngwa decided in episode 2 years ago, but it seems like dining out and all sorts of things. Do you think that contributes significantly to how difficult it is for people to lead matshelo e leng gore a ba siametse?
I think it contributes. I'm not sure about significantly, because like I mentioned, an individual who's well, an individual who has a solid sense of self and identity and a good self-esteem and proper confidence, they know how to govern themselves. Their locus of, they have this thing in psychology called internal locus, external locus. But people who have good self-esteem, they're able to focus on what's important to them. So whatever's happening on social media, yes, it's banter, but it doesn't really inform the decisions that they make about their lives. So what is important is establishing a good self-esteem, and that of course starts by understanding who you are, establishing a good identity, because the thing about emotional issues and mental health issues is that they happen a lot in the background. You don't really see yourself deciding to ruin your life for the sake of your insecurities. You don't see it happening, but it just, it's the unconscious decisions that accumulate and end up completely derailing you from what you had intended to do. Yes, you have the right money principles. Yes, you understand that you invest and then you do this, but you're going to get tripped up on the way when you see other people, getting respect, and you look at them from a distance and you assume it's because of the suit that they're wearing. Now you're in debt because you're wearing clothes that you can't afford. Now you're in debt because you're driving a car that you can't afford. Now you're leading a lifestyle that you can't afford for the sake of pleasing other people. And you're only going to, want to please other people with material things if there's something wrong with your self-esteem.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. There's atomic habits, right? So in Atomic, the guy is I think he's a psychologist, so you would relate with most of his teachings. When you're talking about people, totally moving from now you're getting this car because somebody else has a car, you're wearing a suit because you saw somebody else wearing a suit. So they speak about something, I forget the term by Bizabaring, but basically I get habits is the little things that you do. So today otabo old knowledge, right? You're just comfortable. It's an okay house. You are paying 2.5 a month. You can afford it. You are earning 20 grand. And then everything is fine. Main mall, or you can actually walk. Outside taxi is not that expensive. And then later on, if you know you need a bit of comfort now, and then you get yourself a nice car. You can still afford it, right? But now the car, it's so nice for the neighborhood. You start to fear, and then the car gets you to the next level of spending, which will be changing neighborhoods. You get to the new neighborhood. When you get to that neighborhood, the intention is good, right? But every time when you get to that next level, that thing gets you to get another thing, which will complement it. I get. Now it's the nice neighborhood, and then the nice neighborhood, you have neighbors who go private school, and then you feel like private school. Before you know it. But we tell you now, salary is totally enough. You are living from loan to another. So, when is it the right time to catch people? If we are educators, right, and counselors, when is it the right time to catch these people? It might be very, very difficult.
Right from the root, like I mentioned earlier, it's mostly childhood issues that determine how we're going to turn out. So it's very important that as you're raising kids, you teach them the right principles at home. And even in our schools, it's important that these things are taught and consistently throughout. When I went to school in my junior school, Form 1 to Form 3, we had this interesting subject called moral education. And, it's one of the ones that I, now looking back, see were most significant in the curriculum. But you find that it didn't even have an exam. It was a free lesson, basically. Exactly. It didn't, it's as a free lesson, as if it's not important information, as if in future. But these things are very important, and it should be a consistent theme throughout our training as we're coming up, so that we don't find that at any point any kind of gap where we've left behind but where we've left behind our wellness. Where we've left behind developing the human being who is acquiring skills. Because it's very important that as we come up, yes, we do get the skills that make us competent at work, but if you don't know how to be a human being in the first place, how are you going to manage life, particularly as an adult, right? So it's very important that, from the roots, we enforce these principles, we teach them in, various ways. And this should follow us all the way to when we start working. As employers, it's very important that we consistently push this message of wellness, that our employees need to be well, not just performing well in the duties, the responsibilities, but they need to also be wholesome individuals. There's a saying now, in new age business, that culture informs the strategy. If there's no culture in the organization, chances of the strategy being successful will be very low. And it's true, because what are the chances that you're going to get good results from somebody who's sick in the workplace? So it's very important. And when we speak about transitioning through life, I think that's a healthy thing. I think that it's absolutely good to start somewhere and progress and keep adding on things. And now better get some idea, right? You want to be able to enjoy enjoy the freedoms that the money is coming with. Absolutely. But it's very important that we ask ourselves and constantly remind ourselves, what is the reason? What is the reason that I set out to go and be an employee? What is the reason that I set out to establish my business? There should be a reason. And that informs what the result is going to be. I recently listened to an audiobook. It's an actual book. It's by Oprah Winfrey, called What I Know for Sure. And she speaks so passionately about the power of intention, that sometimes we do things and then we're surprised of the result that we get. But when you sit down and question yourself about the intention that you had when you set out to do that thing, what was your intention when you bought that car? Let's be honest. Was it for the ladies, or was it, for the family? What was the reason that you took your kids to a private school? Was it so that one day you stand up and tower over them and say, I sent you to the best schools? Or do you really care about the education for your children? So it's about intention. What was the reason?
Wow. Wile khanye sensitivity, especially more batswaneng. The school fees issue. Because school fees is quite expensive, more especially for a very good private school. The private schools, and then the very good private schools. I've been a victim of that. Where you just pay money every time. How we go school or check the facility, but you are paying a lot of money, and then you are like, why am I paying? Why government schools are way better than this, but so it's a very sensitive one, and I want to ask you this question. Personally, I've always believed that everything that I do for me, right? When I buy something for my wife, right? I'm doing it for me because I enjoy the feeling of seeing her happy, right? And when she's happy, I'm happy. So I'm doing it for me, not for her, right? When I do something for my kids, it's not really for them, it's for me. I want to see them growing in a certain way, right? But I always get this thing from people saying, I'm doing it for the kids. I'm doing it for this person. And I've always felt, I don't know if my thinking is right, but I've always felt, but because why are you taking your kids to a private school in South Africa? Is it really for them, right? Or is it for you? No, for networks. Like, whose network? Right? Yours or Yaban. So I guess the way thing, is it the right way to think about it, or there's no right and wrong? But I like what you raised, Jorge. The why, right? Do you often get like the right whys from a lot of parents as you engage, either through counseling or training?
Well, of course not, because we are living in a world where there's rampant mental health issues. So you do find that a lot of people make it to adulthood without the right kind of, the right kind of thinking patterns, for the lack of a better word. So you do find that we interact with a lot of adults who aren't exactly ready to be honest about what their intentions are, about the things that they do. And you're so right to say that you look at the decisions that people make and they say they're doing it for the children, and you wonder, what does that mean? I think ke kganya phrasing also as well. When we apply ourselves to these questions, how do we or what do we understand by what we're seeing? Because yes, it somehow does make sense that you're saying you're doing it for the children, because the implication is that you're not going to benefit from that. But that is seldom the truth, right? When you're building your children's network, it's so that they don't become unsuccessful in life, so that they don't become a burden to you.
You benefit.
And then you benefit because they won't be 30 years old in your home, right? Things like that. So it's the way that you put it is much more honest to say, as an individual, I'm taking ownership of the space that I'm in, and I'm going to be responsible for the people whose lives I influence, because at the end of the day, it contributes to the legacy that I created for myself. You'll see even with these families that have generational wealth, it's a thing that's planned out 4 generations ahead. That grandchild who is going to inherit such and such, there's a plan for what it is that they're supposed to do. And you can imagine that this child is probably not vested in this plan. It's not necessarily for them, but it's for the sake of the bigger picture of the family's legacy, the name. Exactly. So the more honest we are about why it is we do things, we're able to get to know ourselves and understand ourselves and some of the decisions that we make, and from that point is where we can be able to influence the things that we do better. Self-awareness is the first stepping stone if you want to live a successful life, because if you're doing things in the dark, then chances of doing them well are very low.
Wow. Letsha, we are going to go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, the power of association. Right, the power of association, and then also expand more on the intentionality part of doing things.
Yes.
All right. So we're going for a quick commercial break. When we come back, or rather, please don't change that dial. Renale Letsha, we'll discuss mental wellness. Very, very critical topic.
Hi, I have a free gift for you. If you want to claim this gift, go to www.masheleng.online/gift. In this gift, you will learn how to become financially free in 5 years or less.
And we are back. If you are just joining us now, Renale Letsha, and we are discussing mental wellness and finances. Letsha, before we went for the break, the power of association, right? Let's go high. And go high. No hole nele motse tota wa bana go serowe back in the early 80s, and no go na le the extreme. We had really, really poor kids from very, very poor backgrounds. And then we had the middle class was growing at the time, but and then the classic demo nervite. It's and you couldn't count up to 5, right? And for a lot of things, you tell more the middle class. Okay, most of them they were raised by maybe 2 parents. So let's and then community. And then there was I could sort of no gona le tsela ya go ignora bana ba ba tswang ko the poor backgrounds, because I could also no itela kana it was really bad no itela bana go ba walk about 30 kilometers to school in winter ba sa rwala dithako, right? And no tsena le ene mo tlelaseng le tsala gago wena wa apere dithako o tisiwa ka koloi maphakela mo sekolong, right? And that's what, but this is an intelligent kid. And kwa nnang teng ba nna mo ntlong e le one o nna le bokgaitsadie ba banwa mojalwa go nna go thakathakaneela wa bona, they're seeing all of these things. And ngwana o bothalo intelligent, so ha nako ntse tsamaya, this kid goes to junior school, senior school, they get to varsity, they're doing their sciences, maybe they're going to be doctors, lawyers, or whatever. So ke gone yaanong where you spoke about moral education back then. Gore kana moral education was one of those subjects and they can help to groom. But nako mo ithela go le difficult to go ntsha ngwana o mo diemong tse eleng gore di mo go ene tsa sa di rutiweng tsa di bona on a daily basis. And then this is a child o eleng gore once a simolla go dira madi, they'll be associating with those ba eleng gore bona ba godiswe ka tsela e rileng wa bona gore go mo yaanong re phithela because we are a country eleng gore it has a high number of people who grew up ka tsone di background tse eleng gore di le poor. Rena le palo ntsi ya batho ba teng, and now those people are in the middle class, and some of them now have gotten richer. Do you think that they could be contributing to how we tell a difficult tata gore ha go change tlhaloganyo ya Batswana more, especially when it comes to spending? Gore everyone knows what we teach about investments and savings, they know, right? But they just can't bring themselves to doing,
Yes, it's definitely a behavioral issue. Ke kganya behavior because even with financial issues, 80% is behavior, 20% is knowledge. So even if we put out the best quality plans out there, say, if you do this, it's been tried and tested several times. Several people have been successful following this program. Right? And, some people do join, become successful in them. Some people don't really do so well. I think that is a huge component of it. But, it's also, as an individual, if you're beyond 21 years old, you're responsible for the person who you are. Now, that's when your background, of course, was a factor. Yes, you can't go back and do anything about what happened, but it's your responsibility to heal from what it is that you experienced and what you went through. So you find that a lot of people who, do make that breakthrough, like you mentioned earlier when we were speaking about some people gaining economic empowerment, getting financially empowered, but still having a mentality of poverty. And mentality of poverty doesn't always show itself with frugality. Some people express a poverty mentality by overspending, right? And these are the kind of people all of them at the same time. These are the kind of people who aren't investing, aren't saving, are just spending money. And you'll find that it's because they're trying to soothe something inside of them that wasn't properly developed, that hasn't been properly taken care of. It could be a confidence issue, it could be a loneliness issue, it could be a significance issue. I don't feel like I'm important if I don't have money. Maybe I should use my money to buy other people so I'm not so lonely anymore. Maybe I should use my money to buy a class so I can be accepted by a certain crowd of people. So it comes back down to the psychology of the individual themselves and what they have done to heal from their background. Because the same money that is popping bottles in the club can pay for your therapy sessions, right? The same money that is buying you expensive cars can buy you good books to read, right? And it's a choice that you're not doing this. And that's why I say, once you become an adult, it's your responsibility. We're not blaming mom and dad and uncle or sister or brother anymore. It's your responsibility to notice that certain things haven't been afforded to you. And now you can afford them to yourself. So you should pursue that instead of trying to cover up the wound using your money.
Yeah. So so we've done moral education, and will be taught as a group, right? It could be moral education. There was guidance and counseling. You remember that?
Another free lesson.
Another free lesson. There was guidance and counseling. But we were taught as groups, and hardly group, there's this mob mentality. It's that teacher but ba bangwe gongwe ga ba retse because they are taught this things ko lapeng. So le ha ntse a rutwa yana wa itse gore no mogolo wa dumedisiwa mogolo buiswa yana go nwa yana ha batse and then o mongwe no na le bone but ene tsa ha di rutwa ko lapeng, so they could be quite valuable for them to be learning at school. So now my question is, don't you think gore go botlhokwa gore even at school level, right, these kids ba khone gore ba tsewe on a one-on-one gore go nne mandatory to do counseling and gore re itse gore okay no mo classing re na le bana ba le kana ba ileng gore maybe they are from this type of families, bana ba bangwe kana they are ga ba go diswa ke mogolo wa bone. At primary school you find ngwana o nna le mogolo e leng gore o feitse form 3 ke ene breadwinner. So we tell her now these kids, they need proper attention, because for them to understand when they are of age, or now I'm responsible for my life. Na go we tell go toka gore gongwe aba na kila rutwa gore kana me botshelo bontse jana go tana go ileng gore yano o ta bo lebello le nosi go sa tola go te mama this or brother this yalo gore reintroduce dio tse ko sekolong gore on a one-on-one. It's gore you guys you do one-on-one session, counseling sessions, I guess, and you'd agree or they are a lot more effective than maybe teaching a group. I guess a group, they can be excitement, yes, they can learn one or two things, but it's on a one-on-one when people can actually come and disclose.
Yes, so the different channels, right? Of course, there's the training aspect where we give education to say these are the skills, this is what you need to cope, and all of that. But then there's also the one-on-one debrief that happens, that goes on, where talking is a very powerful exercise as well. Just being able to feel like you're being heard as a human being is so significant. It's one of our biggest human needs. Just being able to talk to another person and having what you're saying being validated, not validated in any significant way, you're right, but just having it fall on ears that are actually attentive to you, ears that are present to you. It goes a long way rather for human beings to be listened to. So that is the bulk of what therapy does, being afforded the chance to talk to somebody else. That's a huge thing that therapy does for human beings. So it's very important that even as you are gathering the information, gathering the education, you need to also couple it with affording yourself the opportunity to properly talk to another person about it. And when you speak about getting guidance from school, that is a huge thing. I watched an interview that was done by Oprah Winfrey recently. I'm a fan. I'm sure you can tell right now. Oprah Winfrey recently interviewed Viola. She is an accomplished actress. Again, that series How to Get Away with Murder. Amazing actress. And in that interview, she was discussing the book that she had written recently, and in that book she speaks about really sensitive issues about her childhood, about her upbringing. And one of the issues that she spoke about is she disclosed that growing up she struggled a lot with hygiene issues, and this was because they didn't have adequate guidance from their parents that this is how you clean yourself up, this is what you do. And it was a light bulb moment for me as well, because I'm thinking, oh wow, this is where the gap comes from. There's so many children out there who don't know how to do basic things to take care of themselves, because but they're absent-minded. They're not applying themselves to teaching their kids what they need to know. They're not applying themselves to be there in the bathroom with their 6-year-old, showing them how to brush their teeth before they shame them outside and say right? So these are very, very critical things that need to happen. So you find that a lot of the young kids who are in school, who are struggling with some of these soft skills, it's because there's a gap at home. It's because nobody is teaching them at home. Now, when we admit that also at school, what we're doing is, we're opening up our country to being run by people who aren't competent emotionally and mentally as well. And that's a risk for everyone, right? So it's very important that we also, be intentional about taking care of, children who aren't properly groomed at home. And, the school is the next best place for that, because that's where children spend a lot of time. And even with herself, Viola, she did say that, her teachers were her superheroes. Oprah as well, her teachers were her superheroes because they came in and filled that gap where the parent wasn't there.
Yeah. Hey, it's all the cancer stress because as you speak about them, you start to think nationally, you start to think internationally, why we are seeing things that we are seeing, why we are seeing leaders competing for and then because they have so much power now, they can really hurt a lot of people, so ha re bua ka kganyone ya go ruta bana ko sekolong akere, and then re lebella gore kana these are people who and eventually grow up either gongwe ba suppressitse maikutlo a bone, because people are very good at doing that, right? Ha ke re wa lebella gore society ntse yang okeno ga ba bate motho o tsosa modumo ke re o ra gore ke ta didimala batho go didimala ga gore ga ba bate go bua. We are just saying, okay, I need to adapt, right? So okay, no, people are buying cars, I need to buy a car. People are buying a house, I need to buy a house. And then it looks like everything is normal, but things are not normal inside of you. And then people get married. And most of the time when they do get married, I believe they get married to the person o tshwanang le character e ba e portray, not themselves, right? And then lenyalo la simolola, and marriage is not a joke. You need to be real in it, because it's a real life. When you are in it, there's no character that people know, nothing decorated when you are in the house, right? And now the divorce, I don't know, I just know the statistical we have a very high level of divorce, right? We have a very high level of divorce. So I just wanted you to clarify, we kopanya le madi, because most of the time we tell you money is not the underlying factor here, right? It's more character, but we tell you go hella go ama madi thata gore di divorce tse di kana tse sente what are some of the major causes tse leng gore go ngola di bona?
Of course, it's individual unhappiness, right? And most of the time when people come and present that we're having trouble in our relationship, and this day and age, cohabitation, we don't even wait to deal with it at marriage level. So some of these cases go unrecorded because they don't get to divorce court, but they're still going on in the homes. That you get into a relationship with an individual, they appear to be doing well, but the slightest trip that affects their income completely unleashes a new human being, and you'll see that it's because the individual was unhappy in the first place. And everything or most of the things that they do are in effort to mask that unhappiness. Lue, another individual that they went after, you represented something that they want to see, to appear to be, and you compliment that. So
it's fake on fake.
Exactly. So, they pursued you because, you can be a good look for them, but they don't really have the personal capacity. They don't have the integrity. They don't have the virtues. They don't have the right mindset in order to sustain a healthy relationship with you. And you see that is a huge problem that happens in relationships, because most of the time when people hide behind money, it's an insecurity issue. And insecurity really troubles relationships, because people who are insecure in relationships aren't insecurity, because often when we speak about insecurity, people think that it refers to you're insecure if you're jealous, always monitoring the person you're with. But I refer to insecurity as being in denial of what is in front of you. not accepting that this beautiful woman actually loves me, not accepting that, you know, this charactered man actually cares about me and is going to be loyal to me, hand forever, ora forever. And it's not a lie. So, you know, when you're dealing with those kinds of insecurities, obviously they're going to get in the way of the relationship, because half the time you're operating from a space where you're unsure. You don't think that you're worthy of the relationship that you're in. And then the other half of the time, you know, you're trying to overcompensate for the time that you were absent from it. So it becomes this vicious cycle of you know, not knowing which hat to wear while you're in the relationship. And it can become very confusing for your partner because they don't know who you are. They don't know what you believe about them. And, you know, where still these issues also appear in your finances as well, because you'll find that most of the time, in these relationships where, say, for example, what we're told commonly in society that the man is the provider and all of this, and sure, well, that should be the case. And you find that, you know, some people go into a relationship with an unequal hand on, you know, financial empowerment, right? One partner is working, one isn't. You find that the insecure partner now starts to punish the one who doesn't have, you know, economic resources by not giving them money, by, you know, restricting their spending and things like that, all in effort to, you know, win that power struggle, not seeing how much it's damaging the relationship at the core, right? Because when you mistreat somebody, they tend not to trust you anymore. When you mistreat somebody, it builds resentment in the relationship. So it's very important that, you know, we distinguish these issues so they don't creep into our relationships and destroy quality, or what could have been quality unions.
Yeah. Wow. So I think you've clearly clarified that, and we can't win until you know, we get to understand ourselves better before we tsena mo manyalong. You know, nkila be ke rata go fila gore gongwe ma tekere e batho ba letsola.
Other cultures.
Other cultures, right?
Yes.
Other cultures. But especially in Tatamu TV, you know, growing up, you know, they used to encourage like dating. And when kids are young, by the 10 years, you know, you'd know, okay, no, your boy, and you know, they'll be encouraged, you know, to go out on a date, you know, gore msimanyana o kgone go apara sutunyana a tsenya thai ya ba tsamaya le kele ya gagwe ba beelwa tafolenyana ha le nna datingnyana ba. It looks like gongwe re rotloetsa dilo tse e leng gore ga di a nna sentle, but because ne ba le under the care ya batsadi go kgona gore go controlwe se se diragalang. Maybe if the boy gets emotional because the girl asked a certain question, then the parents are able to come in and say, no, but that's not a bad question, you know. That's how you need to answer it, my boy. This is what she meant, or this is what she wanted to understand, right? So this is how you need to tackle it. So rona ga re pate go nna go itse gore go diragala eng ka bana ba rona. Go ra ile sengwe you'll turn a blind eye. But how about I get it. And then they're struggling with relationships. I was just having a conversation with my son yesterday. So I can girlfriend. So you know, what's going on? So boy, what's going on? Hey, how na mutwa guy? Papa no, yeah. But I no mutwa guy. When I can go to a kind of or watch a movie or something like that. And I know it's complicated. So, but I just wanted to break that ice and so that we can engage you know, because banaba ipola under our roofs. You know, because you don't know what's going on with them. And most of the time what they're struggling with, and you would know this from a financial point of view, you get a lot of clients by they come and when they put the problem on the table, you look at it like nako nngwe o ka re o ka tshega, like, for real. Because for them it was too big, because they're not capacitated to handle those things. Ga ba di itse wa bona so le rona ngo itelele gore no ne le khanyela gore no mosana na mo reile re kana mosimane na mo reile re, this is what you can tell them, and then they solve it quickly. So Letsha, we are getting to the last segment of our show. Ke le mogolo re sala re simolla go bua tota ha re se re go itseela sente gore sente wena o mang o godile jang. So when it comes to so ne dikgang tsa bo madiana, were you raised by parents ba ileng gore ne banna ba bua ka madi, ba go ruta ka bo go save, ba go invest and stuff like that?
Well, I am very blessed to be second generation, as in when I bula matlo ke tletse le gore go na le foundation, because for some people they have to be the ones to actually break through that thing of poverty and actually start to build a legacy for their families. But my parents did quite well for themselves, and we didn't necessarily have conversations about what it is that you should do with money and how to invest and all of that, but the influence was there. I did see that my parents are striving for quality things. I could see even in the home that even other middle class households, because I don't think that we were necessarily rich, but we were middle to high, and I could see that the quality of our lives far surpassed other families Balongoro would belong to the same bracket, and it was more of a principle thing that this is us and this is what we subscribe to. And you see it even across my siblings as well, that we really do hold ourselves up to certain standards, and it's because that example had been set for us by our parents. Not only that, but they also empowered us to be able to do certain things. I did go to pretty good schools, and when I finished my Form 5, also going into university, we had nice resources in the home like internet, and this having internet in the home is what exposed me to YouTube. Then I started following documentaries, started discovering success principles, so the learning was so much easier. Also having a mom who had been working in the library most of her life, reading was also part of the culture at home, so I was never intimidated by these thick books. I'd go at them, read them, have all the information in here. In fact, it's my mom's copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad that I got to read. It's her copy of Kiss That Frog that I got to read. It's her copy of Who Moved My Cheese that I got to read. So you see that the influence is there, even though we're not having live conversations. Okay, Letsha, what have you invested in ever since you started working? But the foundation was properly set.
And talking about Who Moved My Cheese, I was just telling you about the 15 valuable laws of growth. Actually, Who Moved My Cheese is the one after the 15 laws, I think about Who Moved My Cheese, and then I was like, it's time to change. It's time to change. So what are you currently reading now?
I am currently I haven't had much time to read much, but I'm currently reading, it's more of a storybook though. It's by Maya Angelou, called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It's a very old book, but I've always been curious about it. I wanted to know what's in there. So I started it about a week ago. I'm almost halfway through. It's quite interesting. But in terms of, for skills and, growing in my capacity, the last book that I had my hand on was The Ego is the Enemy, and it just speaks about how we often get in our own way because it's the invisible, emotional, mental things that really block us from what it is that we want to achieve in life. And the unfortunate thing is that when we see that happening, we then express that now sabotage. But when you change that view, you start to see that you really are responsible for the quality of your life, and that's what empowers you to change.
It's all in the mind.
Exactly.
I sometimes say to my guys here at the office, Africa is so easy to progress in Africa. because the way ka ha ile gore ra kanya ka teng ha ile gore una le competition o khona go tsaya nonyane yala get a dead bird o tawela thala mo officing ya bone and then you run. They're going to come in, they find that bird, and then they'll believe all sorts of things. And then the way they start thinking from there on, limited to what they feel, you know, when actually everything is actually in the mind. You change how you think, and then change. Letsha, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure, really. This was a beautiful conversation. The conversations didn't I just like to let them be free, you know, of time and everything. But because we are professionals, you have a life. You know, we can't be here all day. You know, but I really, really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yes. So how about go itshwaraganya le lona? All
right, so Key Wealth offices at CBD. You can reach us on Facebook. We do also have a website, www.keywealth.co.bw. You can also reach us on the telephone at 311-4034.
Letsha, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching from today's episode. And if you want to engage with us or for collaboration, please call us at 3950026, 3950026, or check us on our social media pages at the Masheleng Magazine or Ignite Wealth.
Hi, I have a free gift for you. If you want to claim this gift, go to www.masheleng.online/gift. In this gift, you will learn how to become financially free in 5 years or less.